Hi, everyone. This is Claire Femian, the Managing Director at Optimize Hire. We're back again today on Friday, April 17th, with a quick update to the rollout of the CARES Act, specifically the Paycheck Protection Plan. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Nick Lobuglio for that update.
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, it's mostly not good news. So if you're listening to this review of what's happened this week and what's going on right now, hopefully some of you are getting PPP loans, so there could be some good news, but we'll just sort of get into what's happened since last Friday when we did an update, right? So even last Friday, Congress was starting negotiations around adding more money to the PPP program, but also to lots of other programs. If you remember, if we go to our What the CARES Act did, it authorized money for all sorts of different things, the EIDLs and the PPP that we talked a lot about, and also all sorts of tax benefits, these cash payments. This is in the news. Some of you may have received them this week. These started going out last week. Unemployment benefits have changed, and then all sorts of assistance for state governments and the healthcare industry specifically. All of these things are moving around this legislation. So even when we spoke last week, Republicans specifically wanted more money just for the PPP, while Democrats said, we want more money for everything. And we want the PPP specific guarantees to make sure these loans are going only to like small businesses and not like sort of like masked large businesses, because based on affiliation rules, certain like relatively larger businesses with hundreds of employees can still apply to these. And basically anyone under 500 employees can apply to these. So that's what the Democrats want. And unfortunately, every day from about last Thursday, the 9th, senators and congressmen have been warning that we're about to run out of money. And that actually happened on Thursday morning. As of Thursday morning of this week, just yesterday, basically, you can still contact your bank about a PPP loan. They'll probably still talk to you about it. They might even accept your application. But as of Thursday morning, the bank lender who would have gone into a portal after looking through documents and deciding to approve the loan, they would have gone into a portal provided by the SBA in order to upload your loan and sort of attach your little piece of the economy to this 349 billion that was initially authorized. And as of Thursday morning, yesterday, the SBA has told the bankers we are shutting down the system. We're not taking any more until Congress gives us more money, because we've allocated all 349 billion. So hopefully, if you're one of the people who's been listening to us since the first week of April, right after the CARES Act was passed on March 27th, hopefully your application is in. There is a small chance you've already gotten your money. That's sort of my point 4 here, is there are sort of isolated stories now coming out about people. They've been told by their bank they were getting the PPP money, and it's actually hitting bank accounts this week. So hopefully some of you listening are in that group. Unfortunately, you're more likely to be in that group. Well, not unfortunately, but if you were working with a very small, very local bank, the large banks, the Wells Fargos, the Chases, Bank of America, they are so overwhelmed with the thousands of applications that they've gotten and the relatively few employees they have dedicated to this program, that they're basically not communicating with their customers. But if you applied to a small bank, like when we talked about last week, my local bank, the Port Richmond Savings Bank, you can get the lender on the phone there, and he can tell you that he submitted it on whatever day, and then some of those people are really getting their money. The big banks are hard to reach, even though they've accepted lots of these loans and put them through the SBA portal. So nobody knows, this is important, nobody knows what percentage of the PPP loans have actually been distributed. They know how many have been applied for through the SBA portal, but nobody knows really how much has gotten into accounts, because it's still the banks who are putting that money into people's accounts, and the government doesn't have a clear window into seeing how much money has really gone to people. So as of now, you're starting to see these like isolated stories in local news and stuff around, hey, this business got their PPP money and now they're rehiring all their employees. So that's great. I mean, that's the whole point of the program and all $349 billion of the PPP. but the government even doesn't have a super clear window into how much money has hit people's accounts yet. And then unfortunately, to return to point two, and point three, it's just kind of unpleasant because um, it seems like, this is one of these places where because both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, want more money for the PPP program. The Republicans, though, want to just pass basically a unanimous line item through the Senate where we're just going to give 250 billion about, we'll continue to talk about and figure out when we can pass something. The Democrats have staked out a position, both in the Senate and in the House, that it would have to get through, that they only want to pass that 250 billion more for PPP if there are specific new things created that will guarantee very small businesses, you might call them, like businesses with only a couple dozen employees. They're not saying what number they want on that, but they're worried about too much of the PPP money going to big companies and too many small companies, places down the street with 8 employees getting shut out of the PPP money. So the Democrats want to add stipulations to make sure that more of those very small businesses get PPP money, and the Democrats want more money allocated to the state governments and to the healthcare industry, other parts of the CARES Act, as part of sort of like, CARES Act Part 2 or whatever you would want to call it. And so both sides are sort of now blaming each other day to day around the lack of progress. The Republicans are saying that the Democrats are holding small businesses hostage, and the Democrats are saying the Republicans are unwilling to help all these other people who need aid, and they're unwilling to help the really small businesses. They're even like sort of spinning it to that, to say that the Republicans don't want you to know that, too many big companies, mass to small companies, are getting this money. It's hard to even know, from my position, it's a value judgment as to who's right or wrong. But another just sad thing is the most up-to-date information on this stuff is Marco Rubio. We've talked about in previous weeks, because he's the head of the Senate's committee on small businesses. He really, provides the most up-to-date information on this. Just 55 minutes ago, as we're recording this, he's blaming Schumer and Pelosi for blocking additional funds needed. He puts these videos up every day where he's, calling out Speaker Pelosi for holding up aid to small businesses. And then similarly, Nancy Pelosi is not quite so aggressive, but she, is also tweeting almost by the hour about, things related to, retweeting here just earlier today. Oh, got reloaded, about what, what is needed for the PPP loans. So, just like day to day, they're sharing information in that way, because, frankly, if you've been listening to these webinars, you're usually ahead of the national news by a day or two, because the national news is still kind of slow in their reporting on both the PPP and the EIDLs. It's usually whatever Marco Rubio puts on his Twitter feed will be caught by the New York Times and the cable news 24 to 48 hours later, where they'll report on what negotiation he was just tweeting about, 2 days ago. So it's still sort of like nobody really knows what's going to happen. At least we can return to what we already talked about. The one good news is that all the people who have gotten, hopefully many of you listening to this who have gotten money, PPP applications through, you really are, if you got it through before Thursday, that means you're part of that initial 349, and nobody's sure exactly when that money is going to hit your account, but you were part of that claiming of the 349, and hopefully you will get that money in the coming weeks. EIDLs are the same thing. Everybody who's been following these knows that they're even a bigger mess than the PPP in terms of the rollout and the scale of how much bigger they had to get. I don't know the exact time that the SBA stopped taking on new applications, but as of when you go to try to apply for an SBA loan versus the thing you have, they said that because there's been a lapse in appropriations, they're not even taking more applications either until Congress allocates more money. They are not going to even take any more EIDL applications. So unfortunate, but if you applied for one, you still should be in that group where they had money for it. I have talked to a bunch of people who submitted EIDL applications, like 2 weeks ago, and they still haven't gotten their $10,000 advance that in the CARES legislation says that you should get within 36 hours. It could be 36 days before you see it, regardless of what was passed by Congress and signed by the president. The SBA has not managed to actually get, and there's all sorts of bad reporting around how reporters getting the EIDL and the PPP confused and thinking that they're the same program. And the EIDL, if you haven't been able to call the SBA, they're reporting that all small business loans are messed up. They really are very much being administered as two separate things, as we've been talking about for 3 weeks. And if you applied for an EIDL, your application is still there. The SBA says on their website that they're reviewing them in order that they were received, but nobody, including the SBA, the head of the SBA, has any clue exactly when your application will be reviewed, when you'll get your $10,000 advance, if you'll get your $10,000 advance despite it being in the legislation, and that sort of thing. The one other thing I wanted to mention, because we've talked about it a few times, is that one big part of the CARES Act that we haven't talked about much in our webinars because they've been focused on small businesses, but Congress basically established this whole new set of unemployment insurance that was supposed to be administered by the states, calling it the pandemic unemployment insurance, where lots of people who were not previously eligible for unemployment would become eligible now, and the states were told to administer that. And then if you get approved for unemployment, you're supposed to get, like a $600 more than whatever your state's previous calculation was going to be based on existing policies. You would get more than that. And it's not that Congress ever wanted that $600 number. It was just because of the way that the technologies were set up. They had to pick a number rather than a percentage of your previous salary. And so they settled on 600, being, quote, the bonus payment or the pandemic payment or whatever you want to call it, beyond your previous percentage of your salary for however many weeks that your state would normally calculate, plus $600. I have talked to people who have fortunately gotten through the system as people who were laid off from jobs that they had W-2 wages from. They have been approved for unemployment and they have been getting this $600 bonus for the past 3 weeks. So hopefully if there's anyone in your life who falls into that category, they definitely should apply for unemployment if they haven't. Obviously, hopefully they have. But that allocated funding is coming through, so that's kind of nice. And then most states, including Pennsylvania, because I checked Pennsylvania, they're setting up whole different systems. If you were an independent contractor or self-employed and not paying into unemployment insurance, because pre-March 27, if you were an independent contractor and not paying in unemployment insurance, and you lost your source of income, you just wouldn't be eligible for unemployment. That's just not how it would work. But part of the pandemic unemployment insurance was that you were going to get money now. The states are typically Pennsylvania, and I know I checked Ohio and North Carolina, they're all setting up new systems that they say will be available in the last week of April or hopefully the first week of May, if not then. And that you will then, if you're an independent contractor, be able to go in and apply for this pandemic unemployment insurance. So that's all we know. No state is really rolling out that program yet, but they're all saying that they're working on it as far as I can tell. That's it for our update. Unfortunately, it's not the best news because of the lapse in funding. You can still, if you're still, experiencing, lost revenue and that kind of thing, and you haven't applied for a PPP loan, you can still do it. I would definitely encourage you to still go back and watch the last long form webinar we did was April 7, right after banks had started opening up their systems, where we spent over an hour going over all these programs in depth. And then we did an update last Friday, just update again this Friday. We'll continue to do this. Hopefully this month, hopefully by next Friday, the money will all have been, we'll have another big set of money for the PPP loans. But the way that the PPP loans were set up in the EIDLs is that you're allowed to apply all the way through the end of June. So just because you haven't applied today doesn't mean that you have no shot at getting that money. I think almost certainly Congress will pass some kind of extension in order to get more money into both those programs. And then you're better off having already assembled your paperwork and talked to a banker than starting that just because you see Marco Rubio finally tweets out that they've come to an agreement. So I think that's all for everyone this week. I hope you are all still safe and healthy, and good luck. If anyone has listened to this and had good experiences with the EIDLs or the PPP, I would love it if you wanted to email me, because I have heard some good experiences with the PPP, but basically zero with the EIDLs. So if you hear this and want to shoot me an email, I would definitely appreciate hearing that. And we'll talk to you whenever we have a next.
Nick, I think you cut out there just a little bit at the end, but all you were saying, and I think I'm going to agree with you. We hope everybody's happy and healthy and safe, and we'll talk to you next time we have more information. So thanks so much.